Hello and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast, recording live Tuesday, January 9th at 7:55 p.m. Central Time at youtube.com/Paul Gallant, Twitch.Gallant Says, Twitter @Gallant Says, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, and on Instagram as well at Sports Gallant. It'll be available after the fact wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You ever have a question, send it at gallantsays@gmail.com. Zach emailed this. He hated how in the middle of the Texans and Colts game on Saturday night, before the game was over, with 1 second left, it showed that the Texans had 10 wins before that last play where the Colts lateraled it around was done. He didn't like that. Yeah, what was up with that? He also says, can we go ahead and re-sign Nico Collins this offseason and associate him with DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson? Well, Andre Johnson you can, because Andre Johnson is here. DeAndre Hopkins is a Tennessee Titan. I don't think we're anywhere close to putting Nico Collins into the same category as those two guys, but it does make a lot of sense for Nick Caserio, general manager of the Houston Texans, to give Nico an extension this offseason. You got a guy who's drafted in the third round by you. You want to keep him around long term. So I'd be surprised if they don't bring him back. But as I said before, and you might have seen it on my YouTube channel in my short from Saturday night about Nico Collins, the fact that Caserio is from the Patriots organization doesn't exactly bode great for signing a wide receiver to a long-term deal. So, I don't know what you guys think about the AFC South. I know that when I first came to Houston back in 2011 to work over at the flagship station at Sports Radio 610, that it was basically a plaything for the Indianapolis Colts. You know? Like the stuffed animal your dog humps. Because it was very, very much Indianapolis's, with a couple of years from Steve McNair, I guess Kerry Collins and the Tennessee Titans as the anomalies. The Colts ran that thing. But when I moved down here in 2011, that was the first year APM, after Peyton Manning, his head nearly fell off. So the Colts didn't have him all 2011. And vicariously, they sucked. So my opinion of the AFC South from that point on is that it's arguably the most forgettable division in the NFL, at least for those who don't pay attention to the whole league. It's a division featuring three thief organizations. The Colts were stolen from Baltimore in the middle of the night, moved to Indianapolis. The Titans, of course, stolen from our backyard, moved to Nashville. And the Jaguars are stealing multiple games a season and putting them on in London. I imagine that they will be the third AFC South team to move at some point in the future, and they'll probably end up moving to London. And then you've got the Texans. They're an expansion team, and until they string together real success, they're going to seem like an adopted child to at least some people here in Houston. But this year's been fun. They're 10-7, and they won the AFC South for the 7th time since 2011, which is pretty impressive. So I went online, did a little bit of digging, and I noticed that the Texans have won the division more than all but 3 teams in the NFL since 2011, which is fucking crazy to me. Patriots are number 1. They've got 9. The Chiefs, the Packers, they're tied for second with 8 division titles, and the Houston Texans have 7. Now, is that a reflection of the AFC South, which has gone from being your dog's plaything to being a micro penis competition where, I mean, who really wins? Nobody. But I suppose somebody's got to have the biggest Ramalama Ding Dong. It's not a great division. But the Texans have owned it. And now that they won it again, I mean, they have resumed what, if you really want to reach, you could call an AFC South dynasty. They've won the division in 2011. I just spilled water all over my phone. Oh my God. Wow. Well, that sucks. Unbelievable. I'm a klutz. This is amazing, isn't it? Jesus Christ. I'm going to be right back. I need to get a towel. SMU Sonny comments on Twitter, Colts cursed. I think I'm cursed. Be right back. This is maybe the most epic moment in Gallant Says history, right? There is so much water here. Oh, God damn it. Where the fuck am I? Where the fuck was I? Oh, yeah. A brief and yet depressing history of the AFC South. So, the Houston Texans have won this thing 7 times. 2011, 2012, 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019, and 2023. Their best record was in 2012, 12-4. Started off 11-1. Letterman Jackets. I know. They've had home field advantage 0 times. The last 2 years, they're 3-13-1, 10-7. The Colts have won 2 AFC South titles in 2013 and 2014, the Andrew Luck era. Their best record was 11-5, which they had in both 13 and in 14. They've had home field advantage 0 times. They were 4-12-1 and 9-8 the last 2 years. The Titans have won the AFC South twice, 2020, 2021. Their best record was 12-5 in 2021. They got home field advantage in 2021, but they went one and done that season. 7-10, 6-11 the last 2 years, which led to the firing of Mike Vrabel earlier today. We will discuss that a little bit later. The Jaguars, they've won the division twice, 2017 and last year, 2022. Their best record was 10-6 in 2017, which is the year they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. They're 9-8 each of the last 2 years. So no one's been dominant post Peyton Manning. Has anyone had good starting quarterbacks? I actually went through the history of the division to see who's been quarterback over all of these years. And my God, there's been a ton. So the longest tenured starting quarterbacks for the Houston Texans have been 1, Deshaun Watson with 53 starts, 2, Matt Schaub with 34 starts, 3, and this one's a little bit depressing. Hang on, I got to grab the towel and wipe some more shit up. I'm not just wiping up the shit of all these AFC South quarterbacks. Now I'm going to take a sip of water, hopefully not spill it all over the computer. But Davis Mills, with 26 starts, has the 3rd most starts for the Houston Texans since 2011. After that, C.J. Stroud's got 15. Brock Osweiler, 14. Case Keenum, 3 separate stints, has 12 total. Ryan Fitzpatrick at 12 in 2014. T.J. Yates in 3 separate stints has 10. Brian Hoyer, 9. Tom Savage, 9. The late Ryan Mallett, RIP, 6. Tyrod Taylor, 6. Kyle Allen, remember that at the end of last year, 2. Matt Leinart had 1 before TJ Yates came in for the first time. Brandon Weeden had 1. AJ McCarron had 1. Where Deuce is commenting, LOL, water. No, it is water. It's just water. I don't drink during the week. So that's a pretty depressing quarterback history. The Colts a little bit better because they had Andrew Luck for 86 starts. But after that, their second longest tenured quarterback since 2011 is Jacoby Brissett, who had 30 starts. Carson Wentz is their third longest tenured quarterback, 17. Then it's Phillip Rivers with 16, Matt Ryan with 12, Matt Hasselbeck with 8, Curtis Painter with 8, Dan Orlovsky with 5, Kerry fucking Collins with 3. I think he was 39 that year. Sam Ellinger with 3, Nick Foles with 2, Scott Tolzien with 2, Brian Hoyer 1, Josh Freeman 1. Those are some dudes, huh? And the Jaguars, how about them? Blake Bortles is the longest tenured quarterback since 2011. He's got 73 starts. Trevor Lawrence has 50. Blaine Gabbert, 27. After that, it's Chad Henne, 22. Gardner Minshew, 20. Mike Glennon, 5. Nick Foles, 4. Cody Kessler, 4. Something called Jake Luton with 3. Luke McCown, not Josh McCown, 2. CJ Beathard, as I like to call him, has 1. And then after that for the Titans, Ryan Tannehill had 62 starts. Marcus Mariota, 61. Jake Locker, 23. Matt Hasselbeck, 21. Zach Mettenberger, 10. Ryan Fitzpatrick, yep, back in the division. This was before his Texans run, 9. Will Levis, this past year with 9. Clipboard Charlie Whitehurst with 5. Blaine Gabbert with 3. Malik Willis with 3. Joshua Dobbs, 2. Matt Castle, 2. I mean, that's a lot of quarterbacks. And if we are comparing them organization to organization in this tiny wiener off of the AFC South, I mean, have the Texans not had more good quarterbacks than anybody? Schaub was good in 11 and 12 and the years before that. He was. It just ended really horribly, like in a similar fashion to Ryan Tannehill, I think, over the course of this past year. Deshaun Watson, I mean, all this shit happened, but I mean, Watson's damn good. And what you've seen from CJ Stroud thus far, you're feeling pretty good. The Colts had Andrew Luck. Is there anybody that they've had that's better than Schaub or Watson other than Luck? No. I guess you could maybe make the argument that Trevor Lawrence is better than Matt Schaub for Jacksonville, but you're not doing that for Watson when he was at his peak. You're not doing that with CJ Stroud right now, unless you're one of those asshole Jaguars fans who came after me for saying that CJ Stroud played better at a game called football than Trevor Lawrence, who had a lot of help from receivers who were catching and running in that game between the Texans and Jaguars the last time around at NRG Stadium. And then with the Titans, I guess you could argue Ryan Tannehill is better than Matt Schaub, but the Texans have clearly had the best run of quarterbacks since 2011. I suppose when it comes to coaches, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Gary Kubiak in 2011 and 2012 had his 2 best seasons. He goes 24 and 21 overall as head coach of the Texans. Wade Phillips comes in after he gets canned in the middle of the year. Kubiak, or towards the end of the year, he goes 0 and 3. Bill O'Brien, 52 and 48. Terrible general manager. Not the best human in terms of being likable. I don't know the man very well. I just know that the guy had a really bad temper, didn't treat people well in the Texans organization. And then Romeo Crennel finishes up 2020 with an 0-3 record. It's David Culley. It's Lovie Smith. It's only been 1 year for DeMeco Ryans. I think you got to give a guy a couple of years to determine whether or not he's a good coach. With the Colts, honestly, the best coach that the Colts had, even though Chuck Pagano had a good record, 53 and 43, is probably Bruce Arians, that 9-3 Coach of the Year season where he came in for Chuck Pagano, who was dealing with cancer. Frank Reich had a pretty good record, too. He was 40, 33, and 1. So, okay, maybe the Colts have had better coaches than the Houston Texans to this point. But the Jaguars had Jack Del Rio in his final season. Mel Tucker, future problematic coach at Michigan State, was the interim head coach that end of that season. They had Mike Mularkey, who went 2-14. They had Gus Bradley, who was 14-44. Doug Marrone after that, 23-43. Urban Meyer, 2-11. In the last 2 years, they've had Doug Peterson, who's only 18-16. And then you got the Titans, who were just the boring pie before Mike Vrabel, who they fired today. 11-13, from 2011 through 2013, Mike Munchak was 22-26. Ken Wisenhunt, 2014 and 2015, was 3-20. He didn't even finish the 2015 year. Mike Mularkey brings the exotic smash mouth offense to Tennessee. They go 20-21 from 15 through 17. So he had a tenure at both the Jaguars and the Titans. And then you got Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel from 2018 to 2023 goes 54-45. He won Coach of the Year in 2021. The Titans made the playoffs 4 times and made the AFC Championship once, which is the one thing that over the little dynastic run that the Houston Texans have never been able to do. The Colts did it the 2014-15 season. The Jags did it the 2017-2018 season. And the Titans did it 2019-2020 where they lost to the Chiefs. So that's the one thing that the Texans over this little mini pathetic dynasty that they've had over the AFC South. That's the one thing that they haven't done. But I go back to all those people, specifically that Jaguars guy at UCF Jaguars, who was saying, I'm trying to tell you, the Jaguars run the AFC South. Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the division. Like, to go back to that guy, like, no. The Jaguars have been the furthest from running that thing. And the Colts and Titans have been afterthoughts. This has been the Houston Texans division since I moved down to Houston in 2011. And you can thank me for that. I would appreciate your thanks. A little donation on YouTube or Twitch, huh? Huh? Give me a little money so I can feed my cat or I can clean up all the water that I spilled on the floor. How about that? Let's read some comments. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Twitch.tv/Gallant says. On Twitter @Gallant says. T-Roy is saying CJ Stroud goes for 3 touchdowns and 365 yards on Saturday. I am not going that far against the Browns defense. Zachary Styles, my guy, hung out with him on Saturday after the Texans took down the Colts. Texans dynasty talk gets me wet too. Some people are discussing the Tennessee Titans. So let's shift into that. Speaking of those conference title appearances, the last head coach in the AFC South to make it to the conference title out of the AFC South just got fired. Jacob Iyer says the Titans fire a good head coach because their owners are stupid. Fair. We have another comment here. I'm scrolling down. Titans ownership is so dumb for firing Vrabel. Like, all their problems, more Jacob Ayers, come from their previous general manager. Yeah, it does feel like a lot of it's John Robinson. I mean, the thing for me is I don't understand why the Titans thought that they were going to win this year. If you watched last season, and I got in an argument on the Talking Texans podcast that I was doing with DJ Bieneme, who joins me in studio every single Tuesday. We'll post his interview tomorrow morning on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Paul Gallant Sports. Excuse me, just /Paul Gallant. I got to put all the handles the same thing. But we argued about whether or not the Titans would be good this season, and I thought, hey, with the way that they finished the season, with the way Ryan Tannehill looked, with the way that their offensive line has clearly deteriorated, there's no way they're going to be good this coming season, which is why it was weird that they signed DeAndre Hopkins. And Hopkins was pretty good for them this year. Obviously, we saw him against the Texans, and he didn't do a lot against them, but he had some good performances in Tennessee. There's clearly something left in the tank, but it was a weird move because you're looking at the Titans and you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, do they think that they're going to win this year? And Mike Vrabel can overcome a lot. I think he is a good leader. But you can't overcome a lack of talent that might be due to that general manager. Tannehill regressed. You had a rookie quarterback. Your offensive line stopped being as good as it used to be overnight. You traded A.J. Brown away. It was clear Derrick Henry wasn't going to come back after the year. But I guess the Titans can do better. And here's one of many weird things about the firing. Ian Rappaport, who is a reporter for the NFL Network and vicariously the actual NFL, said that the Titans and Vrabel agreed to a parting of ways. But everyone else that reported it said it was a firing, including Adam Schefter and including Diana Rossini, who, among people that cover Mike Vrabel, I think is probably close to the most accurate. What's up with that discrepancy? It doesn't seem like a mutual parting of ways based off of what Rossini said. She also reported this. The Titans believed trading Vrabel was too complicated and would take too long. They wanted to move on quickly. I was told Vrabel never asked ownership for a trade or asked out of Tennessee. So, what is my only response to that? So he didn't want to leave from the sound of things. He didn't have much to work with. Why fire him? Why try to trade him? How are you going to do better than Mike Vrabel as head coach? At bare minimum, let's agree he's a head coach that you would rather have than the majority of coaches in the NFL. Where you rank him, up to you. But a guy who's made it to the AFC Championship with Ryan Tannehill and who had the best record in the AFC with Ryan Tannehill, the guy's probably a pretty fucking good coach. And now they move on from Vrabel. How can any Tennessee Titans fan trust their owner, Amy Adams Strunk, after they fire Mike Vrabel? How can you trust her? She's already trying to finagle a new publicly financed stadium out of Nashville. She, for whatever reason, didn't see fit to give A.J. Brown the kind of extension he was looking for. They traded him to Philadelphia. And they're going to do better? The same organization that, as my guy on Twitter, Tom Middlescreen, said, hired in succession Mike Munchak, Ken Wisenhunt, and Mike Malarkey. I mean, talk about boring fucking hires. And hires that didn't result in anything surprising. None of those guys inspire a whole lot of confidence. They were retreads, guys who've been around the league before. Vrabel had been around the league too, but he was not that far removed from the league. And I think there's something to be said for a coach who can still relate to players, like what we're seeing right now with D'Amico Ryans. So I'm happy that the Titans did this. They are fucking crazy, though, for doing it. Let's read some comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Jacob Iyer says, I want to know how Dennis Allen still has his job, but Mike Vrabel gets fired. Well, did you see how underwater the Saints are when it comes to their salary cap? It's crazy. They're like 86 over next year. I don't know if they're going to have that cash. Sean Tonin comments, why fire Vrabel? It's mixed signals from the front office, in my opinion, at twitch.tv/Gallant says. It was also like they thought they weren't going to do well. That's why they traded A.J. Brown. I don't think it was that. I think they thought that they could win without A.J. Brown. And I think that everyone on the Titans organization disagreed. Rick Leal asks, do you think Vrabel goes to New England? If Belichick leaves, I would like Vrabel to go to New England. Personally, though, I don't want Belichick to leave. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that. Rick Hagewood comments, bottom line, do they pay out his contract? That's how it works in the NFL. I think you have to pay out a contract of somebody that you fired, and good luck proving that you fired him for some sort of cause, like with John Gruden or with some of the coaches at the college level, or not Doug Peterson, Urban Meyer, you know? Wesley Wayner says Titans going to Titans. It's such a bizarre move. Jerry2968 comments, youtube.com/PaulGallant. We know the Adams family are fools when it comes to football decisions. So is this really a shock? It's not, but I mean, it still is. Because there's nothing here that you could point to and say, oh, it's because of this. Like, say this was the Colts. They had Mike Vrabel as their head coach. If Jim Irsay does something erratic like this, is anyone batting an eyelash? No. But with Amy Adams Strunk, you're not expecting her to make a just really fucking dumb move. I suppose that you could argue she's not as focused on the team as she needs to be. She seems to be more focused on trolling people that live in Houston with the Oilers stuff and getting that new stadium. Because, again, the Titans are a rather forgettable brand across the NFL. The only thing of value that they have is that the Oilers throwback uniforms. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of a legitimate reason. YouTube.com/PaulGallant, Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Shauna Tonin says on the Twitch, they'll go after Bobby Slowick. Well, I know Bobby Slowick has been contacted by the Carolina Panthers. I think that's the Texans news today. The other Texans news, Nick Caserio was on the flagship and said, like he did this offseason in another way, like, I ain't fucking leaving. There's some jackasses out there reporting, which is pretty funny. Toro McJohnson just dropped a piping hot take. Hot take, Jack Easterby saved the franchise. Stop. Jacob Ayers says, next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Les Miles. JC Squared says, you think the Titans will move if they don't get a new stadium? No, they already got the new stadium. They already got it. I think it's been agreed upon, but that has been a process the last couple of years, what the Titans have been trying to do, and it does feel like they're trying to strip parts. So going forward in the AFC South, are the Texans going to be able to keep this mini kind of depressing dynasty going? If you look ahead for the Texans' future, CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans overshadow a lot of the team's potential problems. They have a lot of cap space next offseason, $60.1 million in effective space, which is the fourth most of the NFL per over the cap. But they are likely to lose some pieces. Sheldon Rankins, Dalton Schultz, Steven Nelson, Jerry Hughes, and Kaimi Fairbairn are technically free agents due to void years on their contracts. And on top of that, Jonathan Grenard, who just got 12.5 sacks. Derek Barnett, who's filled in pretty admirably for you. George Fant, who's filled in pretty admirably for you. Devin Singletary, your leading rusher. Kareem Jackson, who might not be the same guy anymore. Cam Johnston, your punter. Noah Brown and Blake Cashman. All of those guys are unrestricted free agents. So you have a lot of cap space, but you're probably going to be using some of that cap space to bring guys back. I would also assume that in re-signing Nico Collins, you free up a little bit more space down the road, but not that much space, because when you're drafted in the middle of the draft, your contract doesn't really hurt in the same way that a guy taken in the first round does after his third season in the league. Picks going forward. Next year they have Cleveland's pick. We'll see where Cleveland ends up, or the Texans end up as far as draft picks on Saturday when the two play each other. They have a second, a third round pick from Philadelphia, 2 fourths, and 4 seventh rounders. And they have nothing out of the ordinary outside of next year's draft having no 6th round pick, no 7th round pick. So going forward, like, you got CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. You feel pretty good about the future just because of that. But there are some pretty tough decisions that Nick Caserio is going to have to make this coming off season. And you do feel like the Texans next year in the AFC South are probably the front runners. Then you got the Titans, which is the Rand Carthon show. He's the general manager of the Titans. Or it's the Amy Adams Strunk show, which doesn't have you feeling great. It's probably going to feature Will Levis, assuming that they like him and the next head coach likes him. They've got $64.9 million in effective cap space going into next year. And it just makes you wonder how serious the Titans are about spending money before they get that new stadium. Because you get the new stadium, you get all the concerts, you get a little bit of a piece of the revenue from that. Do you look at the Titans and think to yourself that a team that's got that much cap space, the most in the league, is going to use it? Because the guys that they have coming off the books, like, do you keep Ryan Tannehill? No. Do you keep Derrick Henry? No. Do you keep Azeez Al-Shaair? I don't know. Danico Autry's old defensive lineman? Your left guard, Aaron Brewer, do you keep him? I don't know. And they don't have any extra first-round picks either. And with a 6-11 record this year, it's not like they're picking towards the top of the draft. So I think the Titans going forward are probably the doormats of the AFC South. The Jaguars, the question you got to ask yourself is, are Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson better than 9-8 every single year? Because they feel like an expensive version of the mid-2010 Tennessee Titans, like destined to constantly go 9-7, but with a highly drafted quarterback. Those Titans teams had Mariota. The Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, who they're going to have to give a big contract extension to, I would imagine, after this season is done. Josh Allen is an unrestricted free agent. Calvin Ridley's an unrestricted free agent, and they only have $8.7 million in effective cap space. Also, their left guard, Ezra Cleveland, is a free agent. I wonder about the Jaguars if they need to take a step back to take a step forward. They don't have any extra draft picks really outside of a second, third round pick. So I think if you're the Jaguars, you can't be feeling too good, which is interesting because a lot of Jaguars fans were very cocky when I said on this show after the Texans played the Jaguars at NRG Stadium and Matt Amendola was short on that late field goal that went off the crossbar. A lot of Jaguars fans, when I said that CJ Stroud played better than Trevor Lawrence, they got all up in their feelings. The general sentiment was uncreative, repetitive bullshit. You don't know ball, lazy take, be better, grow up, clown. I'm on some sort of drugs, yada, yada, yada. So I went through all the mentions for the first time a couple of days ago, right after the Texans were officially in and the Jaguars were effectively out. So I think I did this like late on Sunday night. And there were some pretty funny comments, like this one. At the Matrix Pick said, "You've never satisfied your wife." Well, shout out to you, the algorithm picks, thinking that I'm married. Have I ever satisfied my wife? That's something I've never done because I don't have a wife. Have I satisfied anybody in life? A good question. T-Law's Burner at RizKing4L. Bro, you look like you've never seen a football field in your life. Laugh emoji, laugh emoji, laugh emoji. Or any sport for that matter. Look like you're 140 soaking wet. 185. Keep your garbage takes to yourself, bozo. Sir, I was an all-district safety in the great state of Florida. I am the pride of the lowest level of Sunshine State football. And you watch your fucking mouth. Okay? I guess I do look skinny on this. Pencil necky. Daniel Cavillo Jr. commented, "You totally sit down when you pee." Sitting down when you pee. Does anybody do that? I know there was a South Park episode where they were like, yeah, it's actually pretty convenient to sit down when you pee, and you face the back of the toilet. That way you don't fall in, and you also can use the thing on top of the toilet as like a place to read or something like that. And then you have Doug E. Fresh commenting, at Henny Boo Boo, "Mic drop. And by that, I mean you should drop your mic in the trash can where it belongs. Garbage take." Good stuff from the Jaguars fans out there. I hope they enjoyed the offseason. The future of the Indianapolis Colts is one we didn't mention, and I do think that the Colts are going to be the biggest thorn in the Texans side going forward. I think Shane Steichen did a very good job this past season, though I don't know what the fuck was going on that 4th and 1 to have Tyler Goodson on the field and not Jonathan Taylor. I've got a video up on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But Steichen and Gardner Minshew won 9 games this year. 9 games. So really about the Colts going forward, you're wondering, how can Jim Irsay fuck this seemingly stable era up? The Colts have $54.25 million in effective cap space per over the cap. That's the 6th most. They do have some decisions free agent-wise to make. Wide receiver Michael Pittman's a free agent. Safety Julian Blackman's a free agent. Cornerback Kenny Moore's a free agent as well. They don't have anything really out of the ordinary when it comes to their picks no extra picks or anything like that. So I guess theoretically they could fuck up the draft or they could do well in the draft. I do like Steichen as a coach, but if I'm power ranking the futures of the AFC South, Texans 1, Colts 2, Jaguars 3, especially assuming that Anthony Richardson's going to be back, and Titans a distant 4. And I probably would have called them 4 before what they did to Mike Vrabel today. But firing Mike Vrabel, just difficult to figure out. And I would feel bad for Titans fans if they didn't all fucking suck. I really would. But, go back to your caves and your hills and keep each other close. Give your neighbor a warm hug. You probably need it tonight. Let's take a look at some comments before we hit the road here. Jacob Byers wants the Texans to land Blake Corum. And I think defensive line depth and linebacker depth is something you're going to be looking for. They got to find somebody who can actually cover at linebacker. Also, safety is probably a position that you were looking at because Jimmy Ward's hurt again, and it's been a struggle for Jalen Petrie this year, and really anyone covering deep over the middle of the field. Louis Salas says Saquon Barkley would be a perfect fit in your system, but an expensive fit, and he's a running back. I think you got to be very careful when it comes to signing running backs for money because he's going to be looking for a lot. Do you want to give him a 1-year contract for $14 million if he potentially gets hurt and doesn't play the whole year? I guess 14 is probably extreme. It's probably like 11, 12 or something like that. Milan Lobby says that Jonathan Grenard's going to get expensive in his career years after his career year in sacks. Yep, that's definitely true. George Ochoa asks, I wonder if Vrabel got to keep the hat. Doubtful. Jim Irsay, if he messes anything up, argues Jacob Byers. He can mess anything up if you give him time. Yeah, that's certainly true. J&D Fishing Pro says, sometimes I sit down to pee. It's actually more healthier, relaxing. LOL, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, like, is that really a diss? I don't know. Maybe it's a diss because it's supposedly effeminate or something like that, or it implies that I have a vagina. Do I have a vagina? I guess people will never know. Don't assume my gender. Don't assume my parts. Don't assume that I have a penis. Don't assume that I have a vagina. Maybe I have neither. Maybe I'm a Ken doll. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We do this, or at least try to do this, on Monday nights and Thursday nights. Your boy misappropriated his time and didn't get the show out late on Monday night. Is it because I had a little bit too much to drink over the weekend? Maybe. All these Michigan people in town. You got to entertain them. You can like this video on YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel as well. I hope that you do if you like what you saw. You can also do the same on twitch.tv/GallantSays, at Gallant Says on Twitter, facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports if you like Facebook. Also on Instagram at Sports Gallant if you want to check out some of my shorter clips. It will be available a little bit later wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And as always, gallantsays@gmail.com if you ever have a question. Until Thursday night, we'll take a look at the Texans-Browns game on Thursday night. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Tuesday,